My guest today is Maura Allard. Maura has lived 9 lives. Now, we're going to delve into a few of those lives, but just to give you a snapshot, she dropped out of college, was kicked out of her house at 18, buried a boyfriend, left a failing marriage, sunk into addiction, and after an ultimatum from her second husband, she got sober, started a company, and became a realtor. In 2021, while dealing with burnout in her career, something a lot of us have experienced, she had a spiritual awakening and moved her whole life from Boston to North Carolina and started studying the metaphysical world. Today, she lives a quieter and more intentional life. Maura, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm happy to be here.
So obviously, I was not lying. You have lived 9 lives. You've had a lot
Many.
of life experience, which is what a lot of the women on our show have had.
Yes,
Over 50, we've been through stuff, right? And there's a lot to
absolutely.
unpack. But let's kind of go back to the beginning. Let's start
Mhm.
about where did you grow up? What kind of education did you have, and kind of what led you down your journey?
I grew up in Milton, Massachusetts, which is about 20 minutes south of Boston. And I was born to an Irish Catholic family. We weren't big on emotions, and I was an empath but didn't know it. So I learned to quiet those voices, those inner knowings at a very young age. And my father he grew up in the Depression, and education was to him equal to complete success. So I attended Catholic school, private Catholic school, all girls Catholic, collegiate, college prep, high school, and went off to college because that's what my parents wanted. And I would continue to drop out. I think the third time they figured out I was serious, that I really didn't feel this was what I wanted to do. I don't think I knew what to do, but school wasn't for me. And I moved for a very short time back home. Um, that led me to being probably a little bit of a rebel. And
Yeah.
my parents kicked me out at 18. And I at that point started to probably at that point started to abuse alcohol to repress feelings of abandonment. And I got into a relationship with another person that was living a life of addiction. And I would bury him. I was 20. He was 28 when he passed away from alcoholism. And in a fast forward track, I married who I thought my parents wanted me to. He checked all the boxes. He had a great job, he had a good family, and we lived what would be called the idyllic life. We had a colonial on a lake with two little blonde children and a golden retriever. And I didn't even have to really work. I worked part time just to keep my toes in the water. Um, but
So it was the American dream in a way.
it was very much the American dream. And I felt like I had it all, except that I realized I wasn't in love with the man that I was married to. And I married him at 21. So as I started to shift and he started to shift, we weren't growing together. We weren't able to, I think we were too young to even know how to grow together. Um, but we had two beautiful children that came out of that marriage. And um, when I was about 30, I separated from him, and it was a really hard divorce. It took 2 years. I went through a custody battle, and I sunk into alcohol as my best friend. Not only did it deal with the feelings that I had as an empath, but also any feelings of abandonment. It was my best friend. It became absolutely my best friend. And all during this, I'm working very corporate jobs or very administrative jobs. I was a office manager, executive assistant, all those administrative assistant, all those were the types of jobs I held. I couldn't keep a job more than a couple of years. I still love to bounce around. That's just my energy that I have. But I I would just say that I got lost at that point. I wound up having to walk away from a marriage with nothing. I had no job. I had two little boys. I couldn't take my dog. I wound up in what my brother called, from my beautiful colonial, my brother called my apartment Anne Frank's fire trap. Um,
It was
I didn't
not, it
have
was a very different lifestyle.
completely different lifestyle. Um, and I would continue in like just a very holding my stuff together, I would say, in my 20 and my 30s. And at 37, I met my husband now. And I was still working administrative work. I was drinking a lot, but we didn't live together. So he was a heavy drinker, so he really didn't understand the level of my drinking. And I was a very functional alcoholic. I went to work every day. This wasn't your like I was functioning every day, except that I was drinking every day. I was drinking on the job. I was drinking on my way to pick up my kids. I have a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame around that. I think I've moved through all that. I was not really in a good place. But in 2006, I got married. Um, and within a year of living together, my husband would say, "You're not even, we didn't even make it to year one." And he said, "You have to stop drinking or this marriage is over." And at that point in time, I stopped for my boys. I didn't want them to go through another divorce. I did not want to stop for myself. I didn't even know how to stop. I was angry. It was my best friend. It soothed everything in my life, made life easier. But I quit and my was blessed with an aunt that had been through the AA, and she told me to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it saved my life. And yeah, it
I mean, it
saved my life.
sounds like it was such a turning point for you, and you needed somebody that you respected and loved to say, hey, this is it, no more, or we can't continue.
Yep, and I needed that, and for one of the best, and he actually quit drinking for me for a very long time in support of it. And that was 2007. So I would say my life started to really turn in 2007. Um, I would meet other people that looked like me, acted like me, but still had a drinking problem. I had an image of what alcoholism was. I didn't think it affected the suburban housewife. you know,
Right. And unfortunately, it affects everyone.
there's no
It does.
boundaries.
Right. There's no boundaries, age, gender, socioeconomic status at all.
No,
So when you got sober, I would think that's when things started looking up for you career wise, because you'd kind of been just treading water, keeping your head above water. What happened next? I know at some point you owned a company, you got your realtor's license. So things started to really turn in a positive
yeah.
way.
In 2007, I got sober. I would say it took 3 years before I could get past the shame associated with that, really get to a place where I owned everything and was willing and made amends and had met some amazing people and I felt connected. And I started pulling at this point. uh, My mother always had a metaphysical impact on our family. She didn't talk about it and she really didn't do much, but it was there and we were aware of it. And her and I even never really communicated about it. But for some reason, around 2010, 2011, I bought a deck of oracle cards. And I used to pull a card every day, every morning. I would say this went on for 4 years before I realized I automatically knew what card to pull. Like I was actually drawn, like I was like, no doubt that's the card. And I was like, oh, that's energy. Like I'm being pulled to that card. And I had became an awareness that I could feel energy. That just through cards, that was all I had at that point. So
Yeah,
I
explain really briefly what is the metaphysical world for people that don't know.
metaphysical, it can be anything. It could be if you have a great interest in astrology, numerology. There are people who channel angels. There is, um, for me, oracle cards, tarot cards, vibration. Um, I study, I will go into it later, feng shui, things, anything that's to do with, we're all energy, like we're all
Mhm.
energy. So metaphysical deals with a lot of things that energy works with. So that's what I,
Okay, gotcha. So sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. So
no, that's perfectly
you're
fine.
pulling these cards and
Cards.
you're realizing
And
that something's going on here for you.
that it's not me guessing anymore, that I actually know. Like I'm very certain that my head is being pulled like energetically. And I'm like, this is interesting. Put it in the back of my head. Just keep doing that. 2014, so 7 years, I was working for an accountant. And it's funny as I was doing taxes for them, preparing taxes, and I realized that people that had wealth that didn't have it generationally or weren't investing had real estate. And it was one of those like nuggets of like, huh, these people have passive income and it's real estate. I have no idea where this came from. Like, I'm going to be a realtor. This is like 2014. And I was at a psychic party, lo and behold, Shocker. And I was with another woman next to me who had never been to one either. We had a card reading, and the woman at the card reading said, "You're going to be a very successful realtor," which is funny because I had already started to think of this. And I'm like, interesting. Woman next to me, she was a life coach and just starting, and she said, "You're going." The psychic said, "You'll get your first client here." Well, it wound up being me. So she became my coach, and she literally said, "How are you going to become a successful realtor?" And I said, "I have no idea. That's why I hired you. You're my coach." So off we went, and we put a plan in place. She said, "What is your skill set?" And I said, "I'm an admin. I've been doing it since I was 18 years old. I can do administrative work in the back of my head." She goes, "Great. You're going to start a business, a virtual assistant business, while you become a realtor because you just can't be successful overnight." So I got
Right.
my
You
life.
need something to pay the bills, right?
Yep. I got my license for real estate, joined Century 21, got on a team, but my virtual assistance business took off. I literally was at a fork in the road. I had two kids in high school. I took a leap of faith and said, "I'm just going to try this. If I don't, it doesn't work, I can always go back to corporate America. That door isn't closed." So I would say this was 2014. In 2015, I was completely out of corporate America. I had what was called Allard Virtual Assistant. I had 11 clients like within months. I couldn't even keep up with all the clients I had. And that grew that I hired virtual assistants to work under me. All the while I'm selling real estate and I'm working a lot of hours. And I have two kids, working a lot of hours. I'm working real estate during the day. I'm doing all the administrative work at night. I didn't even know the first year I like reached a like ruby level in real estate. I didn't even know how much money I'd made because I was just so busy working that I didn't even know what I was doing. But that was a aha. So 2015 or 16, I got ruby level in real estate at Century 21. I was like, I don't think I need as much of this virtual assistant business. So I started selling off the clients, and kept my favorite couple down to the very end. And in 2017, I dissolved that Allen Virtual. I sold it off, and I was now 2017, 2018. I was making good money. I was climbing the corporate ladder in real estate up until 2020 when the pandemic hit, and that would be the beginning of a huge shift. In 2020, I decided to form a team amid COVID, and that was almost like a little. It dropped into my head. Started a team, moved to Keller Williams, and then COVID hit, and I was like, "What? Why did I get this download? Why did I get this information to do something like this?" And then who knew? I mean, who knew what COVID was going to bring? I mean, real estate did not slow down. Real estate actually catapulted off in 2020.
Right,
In
right.
June of 2020, I had 110 offers on my one of the first houses I listed, and I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, I was not
Yeah.
expecting this." So I had a team. I was building that, but at the same time, I'm beginning to see something. All of these clients that I had sold houses to, mainly women, I will say, were calling me and they're like, "I hate my house." I'm like, "We just bought it like a year ago. Like, why do you hate your house?" And this was a consecutive theme I was seeing. And it was like all of a sudden I had this aha moment. Oh my God, they're in their house. Like they're living in their house all day long, 24 hours a day, opposed to leaving for work at 7 a.m., coming home at 6 p.m.
Right. So where you live is huge in
Huge.
that situation. I think it's also huge, for example, when people become empty nesters, because the house shifts in terms of what it used to mean. And then all of a sudden you're working remotely or you're working from home by yourself. So I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. And it was one of those like, this is interesting. I understood the people who moved for like, okay, I'm homeschooling and I've got kids and a husband and the one level isn't working. We need more. That made sense. But the house doesn't feel right. That just kept
Mm.
baffling me. So I put that aside, and in 2021, my team has grown. I have an admin. I've actually moved again, and I now have my own office. I'm working closely with marketing team. I have everything I think I want, but I don't have time. I'm really aware that I am. If Amazon had time to buy, I would have been clicking it every day. I
I
was
mean, you're burning out. This is,
burning out,
yeah,
burning out.
you've too much on your plate and you can't figure out how to triage it.
Nope, can't. And people keep saying better boundaries, but I'm sorry, you're selling $1 million homes. People's money's at stake. It's hard. People are worried. it's a pandemic, the pressure of everything is just really a lot at this point for everybody holding the space in the world right then. Um, so in 2021, there was one house I couldn't sell. And I'm sorry, but this was like the worst client in the world. I've had a million clients, but this client was just not a good one.
Difficult.
Difficult. And so much so I always try to justify it that the entire neighborhood threw a block party when he left. So, okay, I was not alone
Yeah.
in my feelings.
And it wasn't a goodbye, we'll miss you party.
No, no. So long, farewell, and we're happy to have new neighbors. So the house was sad. It was one of these houses that had mold. It was in bad condition. The owner was miserable. The house did not have good energy. And but in the pandemic, you could sell anything. I mean, I could have flooded
Right.
our house. People were like buying them. I couldn't sell this house, so I was walking down the street and I looked up at the sky and I hated this feeling of judgment. I just hated how I felt about my client. I just looked up at the sky. I just said, "Hey, can you please remove this judgment from me? This is just, I don't like this feeling. I don't want to feel this way." I walked into the house. There is nobody home. There's nobody in this house. And as loud as day, I can hear in my head the word save me, clean me. The house is filthy. And I was like, who's talking? And I kept looking around. There's no one there. And it kept echoing in my head so loud. I had a friend that was a psychic medium. I texted her, "Do houses talk?" And she said, "Spirits of homes talk. Thank you. Listen and thank them." So I said, "Thank you." And I started cleaning. Lo and behold, that showing, this house has been on the market for months. That showing, I sold the house. That was the offer that would get accepted. But at the profound moment was the judgment was gone. I was like, oh, my job is to save the house. Who cares about the client? The house, my job is this poor house needs to be saved and have new owners so it can be loved again. And from there, it was just this opening of, I mean, I couldn't even go to Target for a while. Like I could feel people's spirits coming. I felt like this medium that was getting attacked by
Right. You
voices
were reading people's energy,
yeah,
right?
it was
Or
terrible.
their, yeah.
I was like, till I learned to shut that down. Um, and then I was just like, okay, I wasn't given this insight for nothing. Like, what does this mean? And I started using it with my clients. I was always using energy, but I wasn't knowing it. I would like play games like, who's the buyer, who's the what buyer is going to buy this house, what client is going to come into this open house and buy. And I was usually right. I was talking to the houses had people that had passed. I would talk to them. I'd clear the energy. So I was doing it, but I wasn't being out there saying I was doing it. I was just doing it in my own little way. And that was going along fine. Except again, now we're at like 2022 and the burnout is just, I can't sustain what I'm doing. I'm working 90 hours, 7 days a week. Um, my husband is doing the same thing. He's 10 years older. He's working all the time.
So
And
it's not
so,
a good quality of life.
no, sorry, back we bought a house in North Carolina, in rural North Carolina, population 200 and something, in 2021, with the hopes of moving down to rural North Carolina when he was fully retired in
Right.
2025. I'm
So
here
kind
now.
of a
So,
long-term plan, right?
yep, it was the long term. He'll be fully retired, his 40-year career. Great. Um, and so at that time, I got certified in feng shui, holistic feng shui, because I was like, I went back to revisit that, like people that didn't like how they felt in their house. And I realized how profound this was. I took a class with a person out of, she owns holistic homes in Brooklyn, New York. And she had everybody hand draw their floor plan. And I was really annoyed with this because I have all these apps and I have like lasers and I was really busy and I'm trying to squeeze this in. And I kept saying, "Can I just like do this on my app? I have a floor plan app on my phone." She's like, "No, you must draw it." So I draw the floor plan, I send it in. And so class comes and she holds up my floor plan and she said, "Maura, is your furniture floating?" And I'm like, "No, my furniture's not floating." She's like, "Well, you drew your furniture like as in the middle of the room, not against walls." And she's like, "Do you feel grounded?" I'm like, "Oh, hell no, I'm not grounded."
Yeah.
And she's like,
So she was
"Because
able to read that from your
Mhm.
your
Yeah,
your drawing.
she could see that. And so during the last exercise of the class, this is when I realized I had to do something different. And she actually just called me back to be on her next class because I was the only student that ever did this. She gave a final assignment. And the final assignment was she assigned us a house and she gave us a problem and said to tap into the energy of the floor plan and the house and find a solution. And I don't know how I knew, but I knew I just wrote back, "This is your house." Like, that's all I wrote back. I'm like, I don't know what the solution is, but I just know this is your house. And she called me. She's like, "How do you know it's my house?" I said,
Wow.
I don't know how I know it's your house." I said, "But I know it's your house." And she's like, "No one's ever guessed that." And I was like, "Okay, so I guess I do know some things that, you know."
That
And so
might be
I
helpful.
might be helpful. And so at the time, in that class, she talked about EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, which come from power lines, all of our appliances, our cell phones. That would become something different. But I just literally, she planted the seed for EMFs. She literally like made me think I could make a career out of this. I love homes. How do I work with homes? And I started really putting some energy into thinking about a new way of living. Like, this real estate is great, and I have been gifted and blessed, that I bought in properties, investment properties, that I've helped millions of people, but I can't sustain this. And so I asked my husband if we could move to North Carolina in January of 23. And he said he didn't know how this could be feasible. And he didn't know how, and I didn't want to drag him. This is what I always talk about. There is divine intervention. He and I had a conversation in our kitchen, not at his office, nothing. He's never been laid off ever, not even in COVID. He was in a commercial roofing, so he was an essential worker. And I said, "Wouldn't it be great if you could just go try it out and see if you'd like it?" And he's like, "Yeah, but how would that ever happen?" Well, he comes home a month later. His boss has offered him the whole entire winter off to enjoy his summer house, his summer place, or his southern place, I should say, and he'll lay him off and he can work from there remotely if he needs to. This has never happened. And I'm like, okay, that's bizarre. But yes, go to North Carolina. So he went to North Carolina, and I only went once in that whole time. He was there for 4 months, and he met the neighbors. They were riding motorcycles. He was meeting farmers, drinking moonshine, calling me up like, "I love it here." And I'm like, "Whatever it takes." So we moved, and everything lined up. I left my business, which realtors would call me for a whole year. Like, "How did you walk away? You were at the top of the top." I left the state I lived in for 54 years, where I had probably 13 Dunkin' Donuts within like a 5 mile radius, a Whole Foods, a Trader Joe's.
You left your comfort zone. I
There's
mean, you
nothing where
left
I
your
live. There's a
comfort zone.
Dollar General. That's it. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't run to the store for anything.
So what are you doing now? How are you taking the gifts that you've been given and what you've learned and applying it in your new life?
I had to come here to reset. So burnout doesn't go away. And like,
Mm-mm.
for me personally, I needed a full reset. I needed to be out of but I have a type A personality. So I had to be ripped out of every type A environment or stimulus that I could. And I was fortunate to be able to, and just reset how I want to live my life, how I want to start my days, how I don't have to get up at 5 a.m. I can get up when my body rhythms are. My husband still laughs at me. I have like a million plants. I killed every plant I owned up until I moved down here. I garden, I like kayak, I am intentionally enjoying my life. Um, yes, do we need to make money? I started my company, Wind, Water, and Wisdom, and my tagline was Healer of Homes. So we bought a Airbnb here that I completely market as an Airbnb that is balanced. It's all been done with feng shui and biogeometry, which is Egyptian science that transmutes EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, into divine energy. Um, and I can clear energy of any homes and all that. I I do so much with that business as far as it keeps growing. I can keep balance people's chakras, which are your energy centers in your body.
Right, right.
I can actually started to be offering people healings on a very low level, but I'm really playing with that, and I've had success. I'm able to clear energy from homes anywhere and get rid of EMFs and send people videos of the before and after. I actually did get licensed as a realtor down here, and I'm an intuitive realtor only. So I don't that wipes away about 75% of people. So.
Yeah, what does that mean? What's an intuitive realtor? I'm
So
interested.
very in, so we're very intentional. So if you were my buyer and you were like, and this happened all the time back when I wasn't being an intuitive realtor, you'd come to me and say, "I need 2 bedrooms, a bath, a garage," and then you would get a lot of people would fall away from what their non-negotiables are very easily and get swayed
Mhm.
by pretty. So,
Sure.
all of a sudden I don't need the garage because that Pottery Barn kitchen looks amazing. Or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or I like,
Yeah.
I love that granite or that pot filler and I'm done. And all those things that I thought I needed, I'll sacrifice. So intuitive real estate is really not only do I tune into your energy because I can feel your energy vibration, but I can feel the
Yeah.
energy vibration of a home and the land. But mostly it's holding you really accountable for what will make you happy. This is your largest investment, most people. And if you're
Right.
spending whatever you're spending, it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars usually. Shouldn't you be living in a home where we spend more time in our homes now than we ever did before that lights you up and fills you with joy, no matter
Right.
what
So
that
kind
is?
of like what is your lifestyle and what I mean, silly example, but for me light is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to live in a house that was in the woods.
Yeah,
And I loved the house, but we had no light in the summer even. And now I live in a condo that looks down on the city and I have amazing light, and it just makes
exactly.
me happy,
It
when
makes
I
you
walk
happy.
when I
And
walk and gives me energy, to
yes,
start my day. When I walk out there and I'm like, oh God, look at this light. So, and I do think you can underestimate the value of things like that, right?
absolutely. Do you need open space? Do you need to garden?
Hmm.
Do you need to be able to sit on a porch? If you're in a condo, do you need a deck? Do you need a porch? What do you need?
Absolutely.
Will
Outside
that make
space.
you
Yeah.
happy? Like, and so people forget that, and that this is like something that they're going to spend a lot of time in at different periods of their life. Also, color. Like, what do you do for work? Like, I would go into people's houses and they would say, I can't relax, but then the whole house is painted some shade of red. Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, no,
And
you're
you're
on
like, oh,
alert, but they don't
hello.
know that color holds energy,
Right.
and that,
Sure.
and so we really talk about that as I get to know people, like what is it, and also if you have children, like is this going to be a house you live in all for the rest of your life or empty
Right.
nesters? Can we work with it?
Right.
So we really get intentional, and then obviously people have free will, but we go out and when we look into all these. I mean, I can clear energy, so I always say to them, the energy of the home I can clear. Energy of land can be really important. Where it was, what was this land before?
Sure.
you know
Sure.
I've had people here actually where I live have some problem land, and it's because they built over like probably an
A
old grave
burial,
site or
a
burial.
burial
Yeah, yeah,
ground. Yeah.
actually,
We had
yeah,
that in my first house in Pennsylvania when I was growing up. And I believe my parents got a priest to come and, I guess back then they called it exercising the house, but
yeah,
getting, praying over the house to get rid of the negative
yeah.
energy. So,
And prayer works
um,
too. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a lot. I think a lot of people will be very interested in this topic for sure.
I really feel that, you know, any good realtor should be asking that, but it's very hard not to get really like pulled into people changing their mind. And I'm always like, okay, ultimately, I always say it's your decision. But
Sure.
at the end of the day, if you're hiring me to tell you what's going to light you up, I'm going to know. I'm going to see your energy, feel your
Mm-hmm.
energy. And
Yeah.
I just had a client that she offered on the first house. I knew it wasn't the right house. We talked about it, but she was like, my kids like it, which is,
No, it has to be for you.
and I knew she wasn't
Absolutely.
going to get it, so she didn't get the house, and I knew it wasn't going to come together. And the second house she got, and I said, "You're going to get this one." She goes, "How do you know?" I said, "I just know you're going to get
You
it
just
because
feel it.
I can
What
feel it."
and I was a crime reporter for most of my career. I was a TV reporter for 35 years. What about I know older homes, you're always going to have somebody who's passed away in the home
Hmm.
because I mean that's just life, right? People
Yep.
die of natural death in an older home. But what about homes where there has been a crime, where somebody has been murdered? And I know different states have different rules about talking about that.
Stigmatized properties. Yeah.
Yeah, stigmatized properties. Have you ever had to deal with a property like that? And how did you deal with it?
I never sold a house that anyone told me there was a crime scene. I have sold houses, which would be the same thing, where people told me there's ghosts. We have ghosts,
Okay.
we have people living here, which is the same thing. In Massachusetts, and I believe it's the same in North Carolina, you don't have to answer. You're not forced to answer that question,
Right.
but I would disclose. I mean, if people
Yeah.
especially people who pick up. I mean, I've sold houses
Right.
in Salem, Massachusetts. There were so
Right.
many. And people are like, is it haunted? I mean, there'd be stuff going on. I mean, like lights and smoke. And I'm like, is it haunted? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell?
The second house that we lived in Pennsylvania was about 200 years old at the time. So you can imagine. And oh, we had all sorts of things going on. And,
Oh, yeah.
my
I mean, and it
parents just
depends people's.
accepted it.
Yeah, I mean, I have realtors I work with down here who ask me to clear properties, and there was one recently where it was a widow, yeah, older man lived there, and I knew nothing about the house. When I went into the energy, I could feel his wife, his deceased wife there, and I asked if she would leave, and she it was very sad. I actually got very, I was crying doing it, and she said she would because she knew he would never leave with her energy there. You know,
Oh,
but she was
gosh.
looking over him, like she was watching
Right.
over him, and she said, "I will go only because I know that he'll never leave unless my energy like is."
Do you
It
ever
was,
have
I was like
people
crying doing it.
do you ever have people who are skeptical of what you
Oh
do?
yeah, oh yeah. I'm especially, I live in southern, you know, eastern rural North Carolina. So yes, I'm sure my neighbors call me the modern day witch, which I'll take with a,
Uh-oh.
I'll take that.
In a
Um,
loving way.
you know, I mean, most people are curious, and you know, and I always say, like, my own husband doesn't understand what I do, but he is supportive and he's curious. And you know, it's funny. People will be pessimistic, and then but then they'll come to me like, can I have a card reading, or
Sure,
can I buy
right.
one of your
So,
sprays, like,
yeah, and so I think, yeah, curious is probably a good way of looking at it. I think all of us have had some kind of thoughts about energy in a house and how
yeah,
who lived there before could possibly affect it. I know when we sold our house, I told the buyers and the real estate agent, I said, this house has good energy. There's been a lot of love in this house, a
love,
lot of happiness in this house.
yep,
And I think, that'll bode well for the next family. And I was excited that a family bought the house because I thought, oh, this is great. Now there's going to be more love and more
more
positive
love,
energy there,
yeah.
because a house is like a living, breathing thing.
I believe it's an extension of just how we see dogs, or we'll say, oh, that dog sort of looks like the owner, or you know what I mean,
Sure.
like sort of,
Yeah.
you know, their mannerisms or whatever. I believe houses are the same, and
Yeah.
so we're an extension. The energy of our home is an extension of ourselves, and so when people come to me and they're like, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't get ahead. But if I go to their house, a lot of times we're going to deal with clutter, you know, or,
You're going
you
to
know,
feel it. You're going to
you can,
see it.
and
Yeah.
clutter shows up that way when there's a lot of stuff around. You can feel overwhelmed. You can
Right.
feel like things aren't going, you know, flowing for you. One person hired me. She said, I can't get a handle on my life. Her front door had no handle. It had broken off. I'm like, well,
Well, that's a
literally,
pretty good reason
you
not to get
can't
a
get
handle on
in,
your life.
you know? So it can really show up just like
Oh,
within
I
my furniture,
agree.
you know,
Yeah.
that,
No, I'm
you
a
know,
minimalist, so we
so am I.
downsized, and that made me so happy.
Yep.
Downsizing was the best thing I ever did because now everything has a place. I know where it is, and everything just feels very, calm, I think is a good way of putting it.
Calm is a great way.
Yeah. So you pivoted big time,
Yes.
multiple times,
Hmm.
and a lot of women in midlife, they feel kind of stuck, right? They feel like, hey, I may be on top of the world, but I'm just burning out, or I got laid off, or I need to make a change, but they just don't know how to do it. So, what kind of advice would you give to other women in that situation?
I've given it to a lot of women. And we're going to leave this world. We're all leaving. There's just, we're going to die. So, and as bad as that sounds, I didn't want to have regrets for me. I didn't want to leave this world with regrets of not trying things. And if I fail, I fail. Um, but I can always go back. I mean, I don't like to go back, but I guess that's what I told myself every single time that I had to make, where I got to the precipice and I had to leap. And, you know, obviously as I got older, my leaping was a little more decisive. You know, I made the list. I didn't just jump. You know, I had kids now and I had college bills. And, you know, there was thought with the jumping, but there was always this, okay, I can go back to administrative work. Like I can go back to my other job. I can find this job. But what if this works? What if I can create this? And for me, creating something that helps other people lights me up. And so even when I did administrative work, I was happy to help, to assist. But I think the one of the reasons I'm down here with my husband is he's retired. He's 10 years older. I don't want to regret missing his retirement. I want to enjoy his retirement. So I'm going approaching my life as, how can I be present in the people's lives, my own included, without regrets. When it comes to be tomorrow or 25 years from now, when I'm no longer here, will I have regretted the decisions. I don't think any of the risks or any of the journey I have regrets. They all build upon each other to make me who I am. I had the accountant that I worked for. One of the partners was a woman, so not everybody's as risk adverse. I'm pretty risk taking. She was risk adverse, and she watched me walk out with kids, and she had two boys herself. And she called me 3 years later, crying, and she was like, "I want to leave, but I don't know how to leave." And I said basically what I just said now. I said, "You can always go back and be an accountant at a firm, but if you go leave and start your own firm, I know that people will follow. I know who you are, you know. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work." And she did. She left. She has beyond flourished, and she
Yeah.
to this
So it's like
day
make a plan
make a plan. Yeah, like
and
with
then
me, I
just
had
do
a
it.
virtual assistant business while.
Yeah.
So even when I was working at corporate America, I was gigging at night getting those clients before I made the leap. And even before I
Sure.
made this huge leap in real estate, I had invested in real estate. So we had two houses that we actually bought, two houses down here. That's passive income. So we had a plan. I think for a lot of us, as we middle age, security is important, you
Yeah,
know, and
absolutely.
I would say you need a plan. A coach is a great thing too. If you can
Yeah.
afford I've had so many coaches along the way for all sorts of things. I'm a huge fan. First go to therapy, then get a coach.
Well,
you
it
know?
sounds like, yeah, this is all really good advice. And I think it's something that a lot of women who are trying to make a plan and trying to, take a risk that it's okay when they hear other people doing it. What's on your bucket list? Anything that you haven't done that you're still looking forward to?
I really would like traveling is on my bucket list. I really want to go over to, I've never been, besides Ireland, I've never been to Italy or Greece. So I'd love to travel with my husband now. I love that we came out of COVID with this ability to work anywhere, that I can do my work. And that's another thing, creating a business where you can work for anywhere. I can clear houses if I'm in Spain in in America. Like I can do healings anywhere. I create sprays. I can ship them from any place. So I also wanted to create that. So I really want to have a 100% virtual company, and I pretty much do, except if I'm selling real estate on the ground. But to be able to just enjoy this life that
Freedom,
I have,
really,
freedom,
freedom.
freedom.
How can
Yeah,
how can people follow what you're doing?
I am a big social media person. So I'm on Wind, Water, and Wisdom on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube.
Well, I will put all of those in the show notes. Maura, this has been so fun. I am
Thank you.
fascinated by this topic, and I think my audience will be too. And I don't know, I may be calling you for other things because
Thank
I'm
you.
really interested in what you do, and I think it's really, fun, and I think it makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. So, good for you for figuring this out. So thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
the time to do this today. I really appreciate
Appreciate
it.
having me on.
Yay!